How you guys?
Hello.
We're stunned by how many people are here. We were peeking out back, and we did the mental exercise, 5 o'clock on a Monday. Let me see. Whistles have blown, the machine bucks, smoke came out, and right just about now you've been thrown clear with a stack of business cards. You'll never be able to remember who they came from. You ate Mexican food that you cannot pronounce, and you drank some things you wouldn't want your ma to know about. But you're here, you must be hardcore nerds. Whoa! Nerd cred! We're gonna talk algorithms, which, you know what, frankly, I don't even know what the fuck those are. So, what is an algorithm? How do you care and feed an algorithm? What do they like to eat? Where do they sleep? That kind of stuff. Oh, wait. Eli started MoveOn.org and then wrote a book that I still hold in highest regard, The Filter Bubble. You can applaud. I think I hold your book in a little higher regard than the audience does, judging by the clap. And then started a teeny tiny little web initiative called Upworthy, right? When did you start that?
Thank you. Started it almost 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years.
And you've had a little luck with traction in terms of traffic, right?
Yeah, it's grown. It's been like mind-blowingly further ahead of where we would have thought. About 50, 60 million visitors a month.
Peaked at 80 million in November. So you're fulfilling some kind of consumer need, or maybe it's just robots. Maybe it's algorithms that like your stuff.
It could be.
Okay, so back to my thing. What's an algorithm, and what do they eat? What do they search?
So, algorithms are basically just a piece of code that sorts through information, outputs a response. But I think, what we're talking about is content filtering algorithms. And I think the best way to think about content filtering algorithms is it's an editorial opinion encoded into an equation that powers things like the Facebook newsfeed or the Twitter discovery window. And it's a piece of software, it's a piece of code that's trying to figure out what's good, what people want to consume, what pieces of content, if the audience sees those pieces of content, will actually keep people on the site or engaging on Facebook or clicking on ads or whatever it might be. And I think we're talking about it today because these little pieces of code are more powerful now than a lot of the most powerful editors of media.
It hurts a little bit when you say that.
I'm sorry.
Are you sure? Do you have empirical data to suggest? I know you do. I don't want to. If what they're, you obviously have had some luck in either deconstructing, figuring out, or gaming algorithms. What was your original insight or insights, and how did you arrive at them?
Well, this whole journey for me started when I was doing the research for the filter bubble. And I was talking to someone who was actually a web editor at the Times. And he was telling me about Afghanistan stories. And Afghanistan stories, by almost every metric, he said, and I only have this from him, so you can verify. But they don't do well. They don't get a lot of views. They don't get a lot of clicks. I've checked. They definitely don't get a lot of shares. And yet, they're on the front page of the Times every day. Not every day, but frequently. And we all know the reason for that, which is that the Times isn't governed by by those kinds of metrics, and they say, this is the important stuff that we all need to know. We need to know it as citizens because we're fighting a war there. So, even if it's not getting clicks and shares, we're going to keep promoting it.
Well, maybe Afghanistan just has a little branding problem. Maybe Afghanistan is in need of reskinning, as it were.
I
think of lots of dead people and drones.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's
I think of a conflict we never should have got involved in.
Well,
I think of huge bummer when you say that word.
Yeah, no, it's got a lot of challenges from a engaging an audience perspective. But so he was talking about that, and I was thinking about, okay, we're moving from this world in which everyone types in, newspaper homepages, and increasingly people are logging on to Twitter, they're logging on to Facebook, and they're expecting an algorithm to surface the most important stuff to them. And what's going to happen to those stories in this new world? Are they actually going to reach people without the sort of beneficial inefficiency of editors saying this is important? And so that's really like what got us started, what got me started, thinking about the filter bubble and sort of what happens when you turn over this editorial control to algorithms. And then also, got me started thinking about Upworthy. How can what can we do around this to maybe ensure that those stories about important stuff still get surfaced in an algorithmic landscape?
So in terms of what are algorithms good at, and what are they not good at? If you think of the visible web, I mean, a lot of the web is invisible. It's full of child porn. People want to steal your bitcoins and a bunch of creeps here. But the visible web, we have a slide, don't we?
Yes, this is our very scientific study of. That's the video.
Wait.
You can go back one.
What did I do wrong? Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
Was that already up there?
Yes.
Oh.
So this is our study of what's on the web, more or less.
Good moderator would have noticed that. Go ahead.
And so algorithms are basically trying to sort through all this stuff and figure out what is going to be the most engaging, interesting content out there. And I think the thought experiment that I like to run is to try to see the world like an algorithm sees it.
Well, you do got a little bit of a robot vibe every once in a while. I mean, when you really get on a tear.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But I think actually, sort of, if you imagine being in a movie theater and you're up on the stage and you can't see the movie behind you and you can only watch
or the slide. Go ahead.
Or the slide. And you can only watch the audience in front of you. And you can see them laughing, and you can see them getting up and walking out of the room, and you can see them starting to whisper to other people and check their phones. That's what an algorithm can see. The algorithm can't see the content itself. We don't have emoting AI yet.
Right.
And so what an algorithm can see is our reaction to content. And it's an incredibly, it's remarkable in a way, there are many of the most basic pieces of how we experience media that algorithms can't see. The emotional response isn't there. But increasingly, the signals that they can pick up are pretty amazing. Natural language processing is really coming along, and they're starting to be able to read, what's the topic, at what grade level is this written, are you moving your mouse around on the page, or is it standing still, and a whole bunch of things about the structure around the piece of content. So what other things happen on the site and how do people react to those?
You're still seeing the content through the prism of the audience's reaction.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and so I think I've heard you say that you are what you measure, right?
Right.
So what do you measure?
Well, I mean, at Upworthy, we've actually shifted away from measuring, sort of unique visitors and page views.
Although you're able to come up with them pretty quick when I asked you.
We're not bad at them, but the measurement that we just rolled out is this thing called attention minutes, and basically it's trying to look at our content the way that an algorithm would see it. Are people actually sticking with it? What's the minimal, sort of, do we know that people are still there? Or are people walking out of the room? And it's a very funny thing to me because, from our perspective here, like we can see if everybody's walking out of the room or if there's...
And it's going to hurt our feelings when you leave.
It will. That guy right there.
Yeah.
We see you. But the point is, for a long time, there's been an idea about content that that's a bad idea to do.
Right.
That somehow knowing if people are walking out on your piece of content or whether they're staying with it is an affront to your editorial authority.
Well, and I work at the New York Times, and for a long time they held data very close, and part of it was they thought it would break our hearts if they knew that when we did something that was very, very important, but the sort of a little bit on the Brussels sprout side of content, that it would break our hearts if we knew how few people read it.
And I kind of just come from, I feel like it kind of should. I mean, in other words, if you spent weeks writing an amazing investigative piece that in the end was on page A17 and was buried on the website and had a really boring headline and no one read it,
right?
Or 2,000 people read it or whatever, like that actually isn't that doesn't accomplish the civic mission that piece was intended to accomplish.
It might help me suck up to my boss, though, and let's not put a... I mean, a lot of journalism gets done for contests, for boss approval, but what you're saying is we might want to think about whether people are actually consuming the content.
Yeah, and I think actually, yes.
It's a way.
I mean, I think, we think a lot about sort of three kind of metrics. So importance, satisfaction, and quality. So quality, I think of as the subjective experience, the subjective traits of something that's really a fine piece of journalistic craft.
Correct.
So a high-quality New Yorker piece versus a high-quality Time piece, they're going to be different in all these subtle ways that an algorithm's not going to totally understand, but it's sort of this ineffable, little piece of the soul of the publication that comes out when you have quality. And I think,
I do think that there is, in journalism, a quality through line. I mean, at least people in the audience, people in the craft recognize when they say that was a good piece, everybody knows what that means, except a machine. Does a machine know? I mean, that's sort of what what happens?
Well, so
okay.
Let me do the other, the other two, which is so quality is the subjective thing, and then the the satisfaction, let's call it, or the engagement, that's the objective signals that people are actually enjoying this. That's, are they sharing it? Are they staying with it? Are they clicking it? And then importance, that's the civic importance or the social importance of the piece of content.
Well, how is that different from quality, though? I don't get that.
Well, because you can have a very fine piece that doesn't actually help people be better citizens, right? A good story about something that's very compelling, a guy who gets in a shipwreck, great story, doesn't help people make better decisions as a citizen, right? And
might make them careful about what boat they get on, though.
That's true. But I mean, basically, you have high quality entertainment content, which is a good thing.
Right.
I love it. I am a consumer of high quality entertainment content.
Right.
But I think what's happened is because important, high quality, but not necessarily satisfying or engaging stuff has had a leg up for so long, the important stuff hasn't had to compete on compellingness or engagingness. It hasn't had to be compelling because it gets on the front page anyway. And now I think we have this real challenge where the story about Afghanistan or the story about new policing methods or whatever has to compete in the same pool with Kim Kardashian and Candy Crush and everything else that's begging for attention from the algorithms. And unless we figure out how to make the important stuff really engaging, I don't know that it reaches a broad audience.
I listened to Ben Ha, the I Can Have Cheeseburger dude, and he was talking about thin crust, which is everything from lolcats to Kim Kardashian and thick crust. But aren't those bifurcated, discrete behaviors? You're saying it's just a continuum. Like I just want to kill a little time at work. I'm happy to see a cat in a submarine or whatever. I'm not in the mood just now for a story about genocide.
Sure. I mean, and I think the danger. I mean, so yes, but increasingly, all of that happens in the same places, and it used to be, right? I mean, 30, 40 years ago, 5 o'clock, the news is on, and there's only 3 channels, and you can't watch anything else. And 6 o'clock, it's off, and if you want to be more informed, tough luck.
No, get Time Magazine or Newsweek, or that's what
Sure.
defined a really sophisticated consumer of news.
Yeah, and so you get this sort of roughly, bell curve distribution of political information. And I think we're moving into a period where, you have a power curve. You have news junkies that have never had it better. Really, it's amazing how much you can know about what's going on. But for most people who don't seek out, content about important stuff and expect to just have it surfaced in their media environment, that may be happening less. And to me, that's worrisome because, I think I believe ultimately in the, in the idea of people knowing enough to be able to make informed decisions as citizens.
Okay, but let's talk about that for a second. I see Upworthy as mission-driven, okay, yeah. And given your political background, I see it as fundamentally progressive in its politics, even though you guys don't seem to want to admit that as often right now. You don't bring that up much, but I can see it in your story selection.
We don't pretend we don't have a point of view, and we don't pretend that we're ambivalent about gay marriage or we're ambivalent about climate change. We say that. We don't put a label on it politically, because a lot of the stuff that we do really doesn't actually, it's not just progressive stuff. When we talk about, we helped Sheryl Sandberg launch a new campaign on not calling young girls bossy, right? Which is,
I think that's so weird. That bossy, you want to wipe that out in terms of adjectives.
As a derogative comment about kids, it's way disproportionately used about girls and not about boys. And so
I get that, but maybe it's more like a Tina Fey thing where you own the tools of the oppressor and say, you say I'm bossy, no, I'm bossy pants.
Well, it's easy to say if you're a grown woman, but when
Right.
you're a 6-year-old,
Right.
And you're told don't be bossy, that has an impact. So anyway, I mean, that campaign, I'm proud that we helped highlight it, and it's not something that fits into a political box. And a lot of the stuff that's on the site doesn't. And we don't want to be a site that's just for people who self-identify as having a whole specific ideology.
Well, I think it fits rather neatly into a political box, but we can walk away from that. I don't want to label your site, but it's super crunchy, progressive.
This is the great thing about the internet. Everyone gets to tag it with their own.
Okay, well, those are my little tags for your site. But one of the things I wonder about, let me try two things. One is, so mission driven, but then once you had such good luck, no, not luck, and once you demonstrated so much skill in surfacing content and making it irresistible, that the mission became less important, and that just the traffic became an objective unto itself. And the other thing I thought about, and you can deal with these separately or not at all, but if it's, the filter bubble was about people self-assembling into verticals of interest, right? A little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that sort of what Upworthy is, though? It's a big, broad vertical of people self-selecting into a certain prism on the world.
Well, so to the second piece first, I think if you're reaching 50, 60, 80 million people, you're outside of any possible niche. And that's what I'm, excited about.
Mass niche, we'll call
it. When we are able to actually do what we're supposed to do, which is to lift up content to a really large audience about something that's important, it does actually get outside of those enclaves. And you start to have a conversation across, a pretty big chunk of the culture about this stuff. And to me, that's what we want. It's not that media should not have a point of view or should be, siloed, but that actually we have an information system where people are kind of mixing it up and talking across the cultural divides about some of this stuff. And so, I'm excited about that. But, to the first question, can we show folks the video?
Yeah, let's try it this way. My recollection of the sort of origin story is that there was congressional testimony of a decorated military officer.
Just a student, but.
Okay. Who gave this very earnest, no, I'm talking about way back in the day, the guy with two moms.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, tell that story quickly, then set up the vid.
Okay. So the first moment that we really knew, we were onto something was, we found a video of a young guy who was talking about his two gay moms, and he gave this just incredible, passionate, argument about why Iowa shouldn't discriminate against his moms. How many folks, do folks know the video? Yeah, wow, okay, cool. So that video had already, a couple 100,000 people had seen it, and they kind of thought it was done. And we found it, and we started trying to kind of optimize it and draw folks in on it. And the headline's definitely a big piece of that. When we found it, it was Zach Walls speaks about family, and we figured nobody knows who Zach Walls is, and people generally haven't. Speaking about family isn't a big category of interest among other people. So we put a new headline on it, which was 2 lesbians had a baby, and this is what they got. And in the next 5 days.
Not bad.
We own, I have to say, with Google Safe Search off, we own the #1 result for 2 lesbians, which I feel like is a really one.
Whoa!
Thank you.
That's kind of your.
That's one of our proudest moments. Yeah. So.
I hope you screen saved it because it's your life's work.
Yeah. So over the next 5 days, 17 million people watched this video.
Right.
And it's not just people who agree. We had a little survey on the video asking folks how they felt about gay marriage. So a vast majority of people, agreed with gay marriage, but about close to 2 million of the people who watched the video said they didn't agree with gay marriage. Now, on one hand, you could say, well, but this is still mostly talking to the choir. On the other hand, you can say, if you wanted to actually engage 2 million people who totally disagree with this point of view in a conversation about this really important issue, like that's really, really hard.
Yeah, but isn't it a little bit of a cheat in that if I say 2 lesbians, I could finish that sentence a little differently. And it might be a bit more, I mean, you could see people searching.
It's very clicky, but it's not very sherry.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think to us, the important thing is to actually get people to really great content that they love. And the headlines are only as good as they accomplish that goal. And we know if we're doing a good job because we don't actually do well unless people like what they see so much that they share it.
Okay.
That's the upside for us, is if people, at a really high rate love it so much that they share it.
Okay, let's use the video as an example of quality content that was obscure that should be better known.
Great.
Right? Is that a good description?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, you again, man. I just got stopped like 2 blocks ago, yo.
You look very suspicious.
Cause y'all always looking at me crazy.
Because you keep looking back at us, man.
Cause y'all always looking crazy, yo. Coming up the block, always.
It's our job, my man.
To stare at me, yo?
Listen to me. Listen to me. Our job is to look for suspicious behavior. When you keep looking at us like that, looking back.
Cause y'all always like stop. I just got stopped like 2 blocks away, like.
Because you keep doing that shit, man. We stopped you last time. Listen to me. When you were walking the block with your hood up and you keep looking back at us like that, you think you want to have something.
Cause I had my hoodie in there.
They do that. Have you had a hoodie on your body?
Well, cause it was cold. You gonna smack me? You gonna smack me? No, you asked me why I have a book bag on. You asked me why I had a book bag on. You asked me if I had a book bag on. Yo, why you? Come on, why you touching me for?
He was holding me, he was going through your pockets, going up, down. He was going through my sweater. Then that's when he told me to keep my hands on my head. So I was like this the whole time.
You want to go to jail?
For what?
Shut your fucking mouth, kid.
Why am I getting arrested for?
Shut your mouth.
What am I getting arrested for?
For being a fucking mutt, you know?
Also, that's a law, being a mutt? Cuz, you over here tell.
So this was a real recording of a young African-American guy in New York about 2 years ago, getting stopped and frisked. And it's nobody's idea of viral content, right? This is a 13-minute video of this guy's experience of getting stopped and harassed this way. And this is before there was a big conversation in now it entered the mayoral election. There's a whole big thing about it. But this was before that had happened.
Right.
And to me, this is what media should do, which is to help us all understand what life is like for other people in a democratic society. That's really important. And as a white guy, I don't ever have to deal with that. But being able to see that experience, is enraging and makes me care about something that I only understood in the abstract.
So what headline did you put on it?
I'm trying to remember. I actually don't remember the headline.
Okay.
But, it
Did
wasn't.
it take off?
Yeah, no. So this has now been seen by literally millions of people. And to me, that's really what we're here to do, is to try to actually find and surface pieces of content that have something important to say like this one does, and get in front of a lot of people so that then we can have this kind of conversation. It's really hard to have a conversation about stop and frisk when people don't know what that is or what it means or what it feels like to be stopped and frisked.
Okay, but this is sort of best case, which is you're taking a vital issue that's in the public square, that has low visibility, doesn't have a lot of PR push behind it, and you're rising it up. So, but isn't there a lot of, you got so good at writing headlines and making everything sound irresistible that people would say that you ended up over-exercising that muscle and engaging in sort of clickbait, where you had a grand headline and then that didn't necessarily get delivered by the product.
Well, I mean, I think this is one of the benefits of really watching
In other
data.
words, machines are dumb and you fool them. And that's what I'm sort of saying.
So they're dumb, but they're not that dumb, which is that, you know, Facebook is looking at clicks, but it's also looking at whether people share something. And when you think about it, sharing a piece of content is actually really, that's a significant validation of that thing. You're putting it out to all of your friends and saying, this is something that you should spend your time on.
Just a sec though, let's stop on that. I'm not like a big Facebook person. What does it mean when I like something on Facebook? What is the social currency of that? And then there's liking and then there's sharing. And sharing is farther up the hierarchy, yes?
Yeah.
What is it? What am I signaling by those two behaviors? Because I feel like has been devalued to the point where it really isn't meaningful.
Yeah,
it's just walking around with their thumb up all the time. You know? Oh, I like that. I like that. I like that.
Well, it's actually, you know, you'd sort of wish that was true. And one of the reasons that, one of the other things that kind of got me thinking about this whole space was I noticed back, you know, in my organizing days that when, you know, it's really easy to hit like on like, I just ran a marathon. And it's really hard to hit like on, you know, war in Darfur, you know, continues for the 10th year. And so we were
there's some semiotic problems with liking that.
Yeah, right. And it actually stops that stuff from propagating. Like if you structure arguments in that way, it's not well suited to a like economy, although folks are kind of getting past like as an affirmative, you know, as I love that thing. But you know, Facebook and all of these sites are looking at a whole bunch of signals. They're looking at you know, like is a softer signal probably. Share is a pretty strong signal. You know, and if I were them, I would also be looking at what happens in between. Do people, you know, are people clicking into something and then coming right back out, or are they clicking in and, you know, really paying some attention and then sharing it? That looks, from an algorithmic point of view, pretty good.
Right. Do you think that just serious news in general has a marketing problem that because our headlines are so boring that...
Yes. I love statistics on women, some good and some bad. That's really my favorite. But
it's probably true. It has the virtue of being true.
That's true. But yes, no, this is the problem, which is that you know, important stuff has gotten this artificial leg up. And you know, the business model, that made a lot of sense in the old business model where, you know, the home and garden section makes a lot of money, but you have to skip past the front page, you know, to get there, and the front page has the important political news. That kind of is a bundled construct that works pretty well from a civic point of view and from a business point of view, right?
But the great unbundling of the of news means that serious news has to stand on its own.
Right, or it just shrinks and shrinks because it's not driving traffic, it's not driving revenue, you know, and so you can do really well if you're Bloomberg and you're selling $5,000 subscriptions or whatever, but I mean, my concern is specifically, I think, you know, media consumers, you know, sort of newsaholics will be served really, really well. But, you know, Microsoft just did this study of the user behavior of 1 million Internet Explorer users, right? And the question was, what percentage of them visited more than 10 news articles and 2 or 3 opinion pieces over the course of 3 months? And the answer among this 1 million person sample is 4%, right? 4% read more than 10 articles in 3 months. And so,
yeah, but see, that serious news, if you think of where I work, right?
Yeah.
The New York Times, we do 1 million in print, give or take, 2 million on Sunday, give or take, 40 million uniques, give or take. And you think, hey, that's pretty great. And then you think, well, how many people are in the US? How many people are in the world? And it turns out that maybe serious news is a niche.
Well, it will become a niche unless something else happens. I mean, it might be a niche, and you know, this has been an argument for 100 years, right? Like the Dewey-Lippmann you know, debate. Is it possible to have a news media that actually informs most people about the stuff they need to know about, or should we just give up on that and focus on educating intelligentsia about the stuff that they need to know and hope that they'll kind of bring everyone else along? And you know, I think pragmatically, the Lippmannites have something, you know, that's a pretty good pragmatic argument, but I just don't, that doesn't seem to me like what we should be doing. You know, we shouldn't be giving up on 86 or 96% of the population and assuming that they're not interested in this stuff just because we haven't presented it in a way that is engaging. You know, and so to me, you know, we'll know that this is impossible when we've actually created stuff that's important and engaging and compelling, and still found that no one's interested. You know, then we'll be there. But I think what we're seeing is that, you know, there is a big appetite for this stuff if people are told that maybe it'll be fun or interesting or compelling, and it doesn't have to just be choking down, you know, yesterday's Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, but a headline won't fix that. You're still going to end up on the very serious, long.
It actually does sometimes. Like, you know, we had a.
And you know what? I want to argue. I don't think these headlines are all like. It matters the voice you read them in. Like that bottom one. I don't think that's super terrible. It's like, global warming leads to darker Arctic, making Earth absorb more solar energy. It sounds like maybe a big tentpole movie.
If the New York Times will release an app where you will speak all of the headlines in that voice,
okay,
I'm so down.
Okay.
Like, but you just actually made it interesting,
right?
And it doesn't read as ooh, I've got to know about that,
right?
And you know,
yeah, it's more duh than ooh.
Yeah, no, right, and we had a video that was about the healthcare system. It was John Green breaking down the U.S. healthcare system, and
wow, I missed that.
It sounds pretty dull, and in fact, this is what we found, which was that when we tried to introduce it as a video about the U.S. healthcare system, we could not get anyone interested. And we had to pick out a little bit of the, you know, a little piece of it and say, wow, this was really amazing. And what we found was that then, when people came in, they stuck through that video. It got 5 million people to watch this 6-minute video about the US healthcare system. Now, on the one hand, you could say, well, but that headline was kind of vague and it wasn't really, you know, telling people what it was about. And that was true because we had tried and we knew that we couldn't get people in that way. And to me, you know, there's no purity in doing the beautiful thing that doesn't reach anyone.
But the alternative is to say that you're gamifying the news, right?
But, well, yes.
A little bit.
But the news needs to be a little more interesting, a little more engaging. I mean, it does.
No, you're not making the news more interesting, you make it sound more interesting.
Well, but I would argue when people think it's going to be interesting, often it actually is interesting. I mean, in other words, people didn't think that they wanted to hear about the healthcare system. But once they were in, they did. Okay, so it gets you past a friction point, a pinch point. Sure, yeah. And if we're doing our job right, you know, we can tell the difference between doing that poorly and doing it well, which is if we get you know, a bunch of initial clicks and then nobody shares it and nobody's talking about it and everyone leaves the page, then that's clickbait. But if they're sticking with it and bringing it out to their friends and saying, wow, I never knew this, you know, that's a good thing. Those of us who produce content, we tend to care more about Twitter. And Twitter is a bit of a media thunderdome, right? It's being
Like, you know, I work with writers like, oh, I totally melted the internet today. And what they are is, I actually say that a lot.
He's talking about himself.
What they mean is I was big on Twitter, which is a little like the rock band equivalent of being big in Japan, right? It's not nothing. But people who are in not the content side, but the media business side, they care about the Facebook, right? They care about the Facebook because that's where the real money is. And in that ecosystem, I mean, you would agree that's a very important, vital part of what you do.
Totally. No. I mean, just to put this in context, because people often don't actually, you know, look at the numbers this way. And this is a little bit old, but the dynamics are still right. Average American spends about 2 minutes per month on Twitter and about 7 hours per month on Facebook. So,
really?
Yeah. Wow. It's not even the same order of magnitude. You know, 1 in every 6 internet minutes is spent on Facebook. And so, you know, there's kind of this funny thing where people talk about social media. Oh, I work in, you know, I do social media, as if, you know, because there are a lot of little ecosystems, and there's Instagram and there's Twitter, but there's really one, you know, that looms over all the rest, and that's Facebook right now.
And so, so Facebook is kind of a platform for you, or what is it?
Well, it's the algorithm that matters the most, right? Which is people are putting their attention, giving their attention over to Facebook and saying, show me something that I'm going to love from my friends, pictures of lunch, whatever it is. And Facebook is more trusted on that than anyone.
But I met with the Facebook guys last fall, and they were talking about trying to drive quality and redirect traffic. And so they started twisting knobs, and that really wasn't good for your business.
No, it was actually, I mean, so what we saw
you know
was...
what I mean.
No, so we saw a big spike.
Do you guys know what I mean? So, what people would analogize it to, although it's not the same, is when Google, you know, changed its SEO, and you pretty much wiped out demand media, pretty much wiped out say media. They're probably still cooking in one way, shape, or form, but that they decided to just turn the dials a little bit, and it hurt you traffic-wise.
Well, so we had a really great month in November.
80 million?
We had 80 million in November.
Not bad.
Other than that month, traffic's been more or less hanging out at 50, 60 million. You know, we were finished out February at 52 million, you know, visitors a month, which honestly, if you told me like a year ago that we were going to be reaching 52 million people, I would have been pretty excited. I think that story kind of, you know, is based on some pretty faulty impressions, though, about how Facebook works. And, you know, so the first is, there's a tendency, because it's a black box and because the Facebook gods are very powerful gods indeed, to try to reverse engineer what is a really, really complicated algorithm in relatively simple ways. And so, you know, if you accept the premise that Facebook, you know, turned us up in November and then turned us down in December, then did they turn us up in March when we had a big spike and then turn us down again in June? I don't think they did, because what was actually driving those spikes was a few really, really big viral hits in each of those cases. So, you know, number one, I think, is just sort of overreading the data. But at a bigger level, you know, I think there's a tendency to imagine that there's a knob that says Upworthy, you know, somewhere in the Facebook world.
Yeah, it says, let's fuck Upworthy.
Yeah, and they...
I think it's called the Upworthy fuckalator.
Yeah, And, you know, at Facebook, what they're doing is like running around, turning these knobs, you know. And I just think that's actually, that from an engineering standpoint, that's such a, like, uninteresting way to solve this problem, to pick winners and losers. And that, you know, if I were Facebook, what I would be doing is trying to set a playing field for what quality content looks like.
Well, that's what they say they're doing. They explained it to me.
Right, and so by that token, you know, we're doing really well. We're one of the top websites on Facebook now, you know.
Okay, well then let me try and go at this another way. People, because of your success, and because maybe they shared your politics, everybody was hugging you and loving you and thinking you were great. And then there was kind of and I'm saying it's a good brand, it's a robust brand, it has enormous traction out in the world. But there's people there's haters now.
Yeah.
And they're after you. And two things about that. Why are they? And then what's that feel like? Because you were doing something you thought was really nice and good for the world, and still there's people that hate your guts for it. Know what I mean?
Yeah, no, if you're asking, did we prefer, you know, the 18-month honeymoon or the 3-month vicious backlash?
Right.
The honeymoon was better.
You know, that sounds like an authentic marriage, actually.
You know, it's not fun. I mean, it isn't, you know, because we are doing something that we believe in, and when folks who we respect, you know, want to take it apart, like, it doesn't feel good. You know, at the same time, I do feel, you know, so the challenge is always to really listen thoughtfully to the critique that's smart.
Right.
And on the other hand, with the stuff that's dumb, you know, just be happy that we're actually reaching enough people that it matters. You know,
okay, well, so what? So you're gonna,
about.
You're taking, you've obviously taken some steps internally in terms of, you know, and you know, pleasing the Facebook gods. Maybe you offer them an underperforming intern, just throw them into the volcano, right?
Yeah.
Or you start to dish up what they see as deeper, richer content, and you're talking about new partnerships, yes?
Yeah. So one of the things that, I mean, I think the core of what makes Upworthy work, you know, is 3 things. It's picking a few really good pieces of content that people love. It's doing our optimization stuff and our data-driven stuff in the middle. And then it's actually, we've built this community of 7 million people who are subscribed to get it every day, who want to lift up this kind of content. We sort of think of it as like people who have not totally given up on the world. And that's our crew. And you know, the question that we started 2014 with was, how do we actually like serve those folks better? And you know, there's a longstanding kind of being too audience-driven is kind of a no-no in media land, because what if they pick the wrong stuff or whatever? We decided to just go with it and to ask our community, you know, what are the topics that you want us to focus on the most? So we just got the results back. We're actually announcing it now. And
so it's Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber, Candy Crush, big. No, it's
Lady Gaga, who's here.
Yeah. No. I mean, I was actually pretty pleasantly surprised by what came back. I was sort of hoping that it was going to work out, but I really felt like it was a pretty interesting showing. So the 3 top topics among the Upworthy community are climate change and clean energy, income inequality and poverty, and then human rights. And I feel like as a cut on what the most important topics are to draw more attention to in the world right now, it's a pretty good cut.
Right,
like
not a real sexy one, but.
No, but I mean, and this is what's exciting, is that actually this is a group of millions of people that want more content about this stuff, that want to engage more with this.
So what are you going to do about it?
So, you know, we're partnering with organizations in each category that are going to allow us to go deeper there. So on human rights, we're partnering with Human Rights Watch, which I really think, you know, when you think about sort of what happens to the Baghdad Bureau and how newspapers fund, you know, sub-Saharan Africa reporting, there will be some like the Times that continue to do that. But I think the other answer is organizations like Human Rights Watch that are actually on the ground doing this reporting. And we can work with them to help bring that reporting out to a large audience.
Right.
On income inequality, we're working with ProPublica that does some of the best reporting anywhere right now, and we're going to be working together on stories that help illustrate that issue. And on climate change, we're working with a group called Climate Nexus that's a bunch of scientists and journalists that are helping people understand what's going on climate. You
know what? I totally pooched it on the questions. You guys should line up on the mics if you want to talk to Eli. Go ahead.
Yeah, come forth and ask good questions. I think to me this is not the whole answer to the question of like how does quality journalism get in front of a large audience, but it's a piece of it, which is these kind of nonprofit investigative groups that are really good at actually figuring out what's going on, and then organizations like Upworthy that can help reach really big audience with that stuff. And I think that's a model that's exciting.
Go ahead. I can barely see you, so whoever's back there, start talking.
Thanks. My name's Eric Markowitz. I'm a journalist in New York. This is really a question for both of you. You played the stop and frisk video, which is, of course, something that's very emotional. But I wonder, when it comes to primary source content, stuff you're getting from either YouTube or Facebook that comes from a source, to what extent does a media organization have a responsibility to vet that source? And I guess, what sort of risks are you running if the source turns out to be false?
You mean if that guy gamed that video?
Yeah, if it was all fake. We've seen that happen before, and BuzzFeed, I think, has had that happen to them. So what happens to you? I mean, this is really a question for both you, David, and for a company like Upworthy.
So it's bad for us. And
is it though?
It really is.
I mean, by the time the internet's a self-cleaning oven, and by the time they figure it out, it's like you already got all the clicks.
No, so
is it really bad?
Well, it erodes our trust. I mean, the only thing that we have at the end of the day is our trust with that community. That's the group of people who propels all of the content. And if that doesn't work out, then we're sunk. And so we're actually one of probably very few natively online organizations that, after the editorial process is done, independently fact checks every piece that goes up. And
I loved when you guys screwed up lately. You did a huge I'm sorry thing.
Yeah,
and it was epic. It was really good. And people, they were really feeling it. They were really, well, some of them weren't. But they were, I'm sorry, man. We really messed up.
Yeah, no, so our policy, there's an idea that corrections are supposed to be as big as the original piece was, right? And it almost never happens that way. There's never, on the front page of a newspaper, I'm sorry, we screwed it up. And so, in the few occasions where we've actually, sort of missed something, we've tried to make the correction as viral as the original. Like, we feel like that's sort of good behavior online, is to own your mistakes as quickly as possible, as big as possible, and at the same time explain to people what the process is. Yeah, we have a team of fact checkers from big big newspapers that actually go through and systematically look at this stuff, so that we can make sure that we don't make that kind of mistake.
I mean, in terms of corrections, my stuff is always way back in the paper, and the only way I get near the front of the paper is when I make a mistake. I end up on A3. Young lady, or man, or, sorry, it's a long list. Young lady.
Hi, I'm Erica Anderson. I'm a blogger in the DC area. I have a two-part question. One, what are your thoughts on websites like Viral Nova that took off after Upworthy took off? Is that helping or hurting you? And two, are you guys actively seeking another major platform aside from Facebook that may be able to bring in you that traffic later if Facebook decides to go crazy and basically screw us all over?
So the first is about, you have a great business, but there's not Nissan last night, and I think, wow, you're almost your own. I mean, there's some people who are really good at this, right?
If you consider the business to be viral anything, then yeah, a lot of people are going to be good at that in the future, and you know, that's probably less a you know, I think if we look 10 years in the future, yeah, there'll be dozens of organizations that are good at that, or that have people who are good at that. For us, you know, this is actually why we drew a line at the very beginning, and we said, we're never going to do stuff that is fun or entertaining, but not actually substantive in some way. And if you know, this is a test.
Well, is that really true, though? I mean, you do stuff just for kicks, don't you?
We don't. We don't post stuff that is just intended to be entertaining. It has to have some topic that relates to, you know, the public good that we can defend, so, you know, that we can look at and say, okay, if 1 million people saw this, it's worthwhile. And the reason we did that is that, you know, there's a long-standing model of kind of drawing people in on celebrity news or cat pictures or whatever it is, and then you kind of hope that they make their way over to the hard political stuff.
Right.
And we felt like what that often leads to is 90%, you know, cat pictures and 10%, you know, really, really substantive, you know, civically useful stuff. And so we want to try to, you know, build the muscle of making that stuff, you know, good. And so, and that's the line that we drew.
I feel bad about not leaving enough time for questions.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
You have to do it in the headline voice.
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi, my name is Yates Webb. I'm a journalism student at the University of Georgia. My question is about intellectual property. As a site that doesn't create your own content, at what point is the content you're sharing robbing the original owner of their intellectual property? Forgive me if I don't understand all the legal implications.
No, it's a great fundamental question. Plus, you're probably never gonna hire that dude, right? No, what I mean is, though, he's making stuff. And so you're building this huge business, but it's kind of journalist free. So people like me that do it for a living, it's like, good for you, except you're not gonna give that dude a job.
So a lot of what we do is video. And the video actually, the creators own the pre-roll on that video. You know, we don't touch that advertising. So when we do a really good job, we're making those folks tens of thousands of dollars. They get to monetize it. And I think that's actually a pretty good, you know, pretty good system. It's certainly more evolved than, you know, what exists for images or text, where you end up, you know, sort of trying to license it or you know, work out these deals. You know, can you do work for us for free? So we always license, or we always embed, and folks are delighted by it. I mean, folks are really happy when, you know, they worked really hard, they made something beautiful, it went up on YouTube, 500 people watched it, and then all of a sudden, you know, now 1 million people have, and they get a check for $20,000.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, first I want to thank you guys for what is perhaps the most engaging conversation I've seen at South by Southwest so far.
Wow.
Thank you.
And I'm not just sucking up, it leads to my question. And
Yeah,
I think what has made it engaging is David has been able to challenge Eli. Eli has been able to give engaging, thoughtful, intelligent responses. Is this possible to happen on social media platforms like Facebook, or are we limited to likes and shares and we can't engage in these types of back and forth?
It's a great question. It depends on the structure of the social medium, right? I mean, Facebook isn't built for mass engagement that way. It's built for one-on-one, you know, commenting back and forth. I think Twitter is better at that, is my sense.
I don't agree. I think Twitter, I don't get in Twitter throwdowns at all. I retweet the people who attack me and just leave it at that. Because if you know, because I said, you said, you know, no, you're a moron, no, you're a moron, at 140 characters, and no, you, sir, are a moron, until you run out of, like, characters and spaces. And I agree that you need You need real time back and forth. And even in the comments, I mean, comments are generally such a sewer, such a horrible place I don't like to look. It makes me feel bad about the future of the world whenever I go there. It's like, you could say, oh, that's a bunch of people in their mom's basement. And I'm like, but still. Last question.
Yeah, I'm the last person, so.
No, there's a bunch more lined up behind you haven't looked.
Yeah. So the thing I actually wanted to say is that I actually have an issue with Upworthy. And the thing is that I actually agree with, and I like a lot of the content that you try to put out there. The only problem is that when I started clicking on them, after a while, I started getting the sense that maybe the headlines that were there were just very thinly linked to the actual content that was available. And so it got to the point where I just started thinking, you know, I can't even really trust these headlines anymore. And I actually no longer trust the brand. And so I just stopped clicking on them, and I've just sort of discounted altogether, despite the fact that I think a lot of the stuff that you try to get across is actually good. So I don't know if you want to, you know, say something about that concerning maybe, quite possibly, if you were ever worried about actually damaging your own brand in an effort to, you know, get these messages out and doing this sensationalism just to sort of, you know, get at that.
So yeah. It's basically your worst case scenario for an end note here. So justify your existence and your future.
No, we try to do the best that we can, and sometimes we err too much in that direction, and we try to course correct. And if we do a good job in the long run, then people will keep coming and they'll keep sharing, and we'll see that you know, there's a really big community of people who are engaging with us. And if we don't, then you know, like you know, they'll go elsewhere. I think you know, the thing that I'm just happy about is that we know, you know, we're paying attention to that, and we can see when we're doing a good job, and we can see when we're not, and we can try to get better. And that's what we'll try to do. I'm
obviously grateful that you took the time to spend time and that South by gave us a shot. But I think it's really sporty of you guys at the end of South by with all those free adult beverages waiting for you out there, all that stuff. Yeah, I'll suck up one more session. Those guys better be good. We're very grateful that you came. Thanks.
Thank you.